Next, I'd like to call on Dr. Barry Krisberg. And you've done a lot of studies, both on the youth corrections as well as adult corrections over the years. And what programs that you've seen have measurable outcomes? Because that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about looking at what the outcomes are, whether that's somebody having a job, somebody completing a GED, somebody getting a college education. What have you seen? What have you experienced? What do we need?
Thanks, Jeff. Let me start with the bad news and then the good news. The bad news is most of the research is quite discouraging. Urban Institute did a major study basically showing that there was absolutely no difference between prisoners who were released directly and people who had parole supervision. Countless studies of intensive supervision show no positive results. I completed a multi-year study of a juvenile program called the Intensive Aftercare Program. Feds poured millions of dollars into it. It had all the bells and whistles. In 4 jurisdictions, there was absolutely no difference between the young people who got the this intensive program and those who just got the usual. Most recently, I think a lot of people's hearts were broken by a Vera Institute study of Project Greenlight in New York. Again, Greenlight had all the bells and whistles, cognitive, behavioral, whatever, you know, case management, I mean, all the things that you learn about in the schools of social work. And the New York research, very carefully done, showed that actually people directly released from New York prisons did better than the Greenlight clients. Why? I would draw 2 conclusions from this. I would say, don't bet on public employees to be your principal deliverers of service. If what you're going to do is rely upon people who want to work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and mostly sit in government offices, it's a loser. Getting outside your comfort zone is a tough thing to do, and in all of these programs, the principal deliverers of services were state employees, few of whom lived in the neighborhoods or communities that the parolees came from. Secondly, at the risk of offending people, which sometimes I do, I think these programs teach us that the strategy of let them eat therapy doesn't work. We've depended too much on the idea that parolees are sick and we need to give them therapy, and if only we could get them to think correctly, which is what all these cognitive behavioral things do, that would solve their problems. The answer is it doesn't solve their problems. You know, it may be part of what you do, but it's certainly investing heavily in therapists of a variety of type has proven no results. Now, what does the research tell us? The research tells us some very basic things. That people who succeed are people who get jobs, people who have safe places to live, people who come back into supportive communities, and people who have some kind of stable family relations that they can come back into. That's what the research on successful people coming out of prison tells us. Now the good news. We can see some of these programs. In fact, we can see some excellent programs right in our city. A short bus ride takes us to Delancey Street, which is one of the most outstanding reentry programs in this country. The research is very positive. It's been positive for years. And if you reflect on Delancey Street, again, Delancey Street residents have a safe place to live. They have a supportive community. The principal people who are working with Delancey Street residents are former or current Delancey Street residents, people who've been there. As I like to say, I've walked in your shoes, now you need to walk in mine, as kind of the Delancey Street philosophy. So Delancey Street provides all of these things, and while it's an amazing program that maybe can't be easily replicated, it gives us a sense of where we need to go. I would add that on a smaller scale, but also very effective, the Center for Young Women's Development is another example of a program which is self-help, guided by people who have been there, and very practical and pragmatic in its approach. So I think that's the direction we're going. Now, as to a broader direction that I would like to suggest, I'm reminded of former Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill's statement that all politics are local. Well, I'm one to say all reentry is local, which is why I applaud the supervisor's initiative in this city and why I think this is the way to go. Because prisoners don't drop from the sky into prisons. They don't go back into outer space. They come from real communities. They go back to real communities. And unless you get those communities engaged and owning the reentry process, you can waste a lot of money on programs and it's not going to get any place. And I think what's happening here in San Francisco and happening in San Mateo, Santa Barbara, San Diego right now, and other places is a strategy of mobilizing at the local level. Because again, when you think about all the things that somebody needs getting out of prison, a place to live, that's a municipal level issue. Jobs, that's the local labor force. Mentors, supportive communities, that's usually the faith community. Healthcare, local. There's very little that the Department of Corrections can do except fund good programs and maybe stay out of people's way. And so I don't point fingers. I mean, it's easy to point fingers at the Department of Corrections, but they have almost an impossible job. Last but not least, I want to suggest that in this last session, one of the things that we were trying to push very heavily with the support of Senator Mike Machado is what we called an Adult Challenge Grant program. Some of you know that in the juvenile area, we had a very successful program. The state put out money, counties bid, won grants, very good research, et cetera. And we had some very successful juvenile reform programs around this state, which some of us think contributed to the decline in the state youth population in part. We've been advocating that the state put a substantial amount of money. In the first year, Machado was proposing $25 million, where individual counties could do their own planning, come up with their own priorities of what would work best for them, since the plan for Fresno is not the same plan for San Francisco. And then the state ought to be funding effective, smart programs that come from the local level. That, it seems to me, is the spirit of all reentry is local. And until we get to real local buy-in and participation, I don't know what the Department of Corrections can do. I mean, they're managing a unbelievable crisis, third world prison conditions, a riot that might break out at any moment. I mean, they're up to their eyeballs, just trying to keep people alive. I don't think we're going to expect that they're going to provide leadership in the reentry area more than in a small extent, although there are a lot of good people who want to do the right thing. So again, my emphasis is local, community, people who have been there and who can really work with offenders because they understand the challenges that they face. Thanks.
Thank you.